peacekeepers. They're here for something much bigger. Why is one of the world's most secretive regimes risking global backlash to defend an African leader? Why now? And what does it mean for the future of Africa's sovereignty? In a region long dominated by Western and NATO forces, the arrival of North Korean boots is nothing short of shocking. So what's really going on in Burkina Faso? And is this the beginning of a new global alliance? Let's find out. The presence of 700 elite North Korean commandos on Burkina Faso has been confirmed by the country's administration. These forces, deployed in full force, did not arrive as humanitarian staff, advisors, or observers. After a series of failed coups and assassination attempts, they arrived as active military soldiers involved in a security operation to safeguard President Ibrahim Traore, strengthen his hold on power, and stabilize the state. Since Russian troops with ties to Wagner began to replace French forces in Mali and the Central African Republic, the world has been accustomed to Russian meddling in African affairs. However, North Korea, that was novel. It was a historic event. Furthermore, it wasn't a secret or a leak. It was not denied by North Korea. Pyongyang and Burkina Faso both verified the deployment through state-affiliated media. Government representatives say the mission is tripartite: defend Traore and important transitional government officials from both internal and external dangers, secure key infrastructure such as government buildings, military bases, airports, gold refineries, and key communication points, teaches local security forces the techniques that North Korea has perfected over the years, from surveillance, infiltration detection, and coup prevention to guerrilla warfare and close-quarters protection. Furthermore, this was not improvised. The North Korean units arrived after weeks of low-key military and diplomatic contacts in a well-coordinated operation. According to reports, infrastructure was set up beforehand. Important Burkina Faso officials were briefed long before the public ever found out, and cooperative security exercises had previously been conducted. It wasn't a response. There was a plan. However, what caused that plan to be activated? According to military sources in Ouagadougou, threats against Traore have rapidly increased behind closed doors. Russian-backed Burkina Faso intelligence agencies have stopped an armed effort to take over a regional command post, intercepted encrypted conversations between foreign agents and renegade officers, and discovered 2 significant coup plans in the last 6 months alone. The message was clear: Traore must be removed because someone strong wants him gone, and every time the attempt to do so failed, it became more violent. Following the collapse of the previous plot, Burkina Faso discreetly requested assistance from its more recent partners. Although Russia was already involved and present, the nation required further security. One that could train elite guard forces, work covertly, and deal with issues when conventional diplomacy was ineffective. North Korea intervened at that point. Add your voice to the total liberation of Africa by leaving a comment in the comments section below. Do not forget to like and subscribe for more informative videos like this one. Let's proceed. According to reports, Pyongyang promised a comprehensive security package in addition to troops. Tools for counter-surveillance, encrypted communication systems, and tried-and-true strategies to safeguard leaders during sieges. North Korea has one of the most robust internal security systems in the world, despite the fact that the majority of the world still sees the country through the prism of missile testing and nuclear standoffs. Burkina Faso is now installing some of that architecture. Unknown areas adjacent to the nation's capital and north are reportedly where the commandos are based. These areas are particularly susceptible to insurgent attacks and attempts at internal destabilization. They are reportedly collaborating closely with the Presidential Guard of Burkina Faso, incorporating their methods with local expertise and educating high-trust teams to manage site lockdowns, loyalty vetting, and quick response. The ramifications are astounding. At a time when the conventional Western security infrastructure is being forcibly removed from the region, This is the first documented deployment of North Korean forces on African land in such a direct combat support capacity in decades. The US military presence is dwindling, and France has already been warned to leave. Formerly seen as the defender of West African order, ECOWAS has lost the faith of its member nations. The Russians and now the North Koreans have entered that void. North Korea entered quietly, quickly, and without apology, in contrast to Western countries that operate with boisterous news conferences and gaudy flags of freedom and progress. Maybe that's why they were accepted. There were only soldiers, loyalty, and the means to stop a bullet before it was fired. No NGOs, no lectures, and no plans for transition. But more than just eyebrows are raised by this approach. It poses more profound queries. Why would a nation as remote as North Korea put itself at risk of world criticism in order to support an African transitional government? What is the potential benefit for Pyongyang? And what role does this play in Africa's broader trend of abandoning the West? The first question was clear when North Korean boots first touched down in Burkina Faso. Why? Why would 700 of the world's most elite commandos be sent to defend a military leader in West Africa by one of the most closed-off, isolated, and heavily sanctioned regimes? It isn't for publicity. Western media cycles are irrelevant to North Korea. It's also not for charity, goodwill optics, or peacekeeping. The actual solution is far riskier and much more deliberate. This move focuses on power projection, opportunity, and survival. Let's start with the tactical advantages for North Korea. Pyongyang has been cut off from conventional battlegrounds for decades. Its military policy is not based on recent foreign fighting experience, but rather on theory, simulation, and national drills. However, Burkina Faso offers them something unique: a real-life fighting zone outside of Asia with unpredictable battlefield conditions. Coups are planned in secret, insurgents move quickly, and urban conflict blends with jungle landscapes. It's the ideal laboratory, to put it briefly. North Korea now has a testing ground for unconventional military strategies after integrating elite personnel in Burkina Faso. Data in real time about the performance of its special operations procedures and surveillance systems under duress. A battlefield setting for asymmetric combat training, which is particularly important for protecting state leaders under siege. However, ideological alignment is more important in this deployment than merely technical training. Traore is viewed by Pyongyang as someone who exemplifies the ideal stance of North Korea: anti-imperialist, independent, and unyielding. The IMF is not being begged by Traore. He isn't going to Brussels for democratic conferences. He will not turn over his nation's intelligence to Paris or Washington. He is refusing to act as a stand-in for Western interests, ejecting foreign soldiers and opposing ECOWAS. And North Korea wants to invest in him because that type of leader is uncommon in the global south today. Supporting Traore is a message for Kim Jong-un's government. Those who stand alone have our support. It is a strategic alliance as well as an ideological one, because Pyongyang sees an opportunity to gain lasting influence in an area it was previously excluded from as the West loses ground in Africa. And leverage is what influence is. Trade is implied. It entails having access to Africa's extensive networks of resources, particularly in the areas of rare earth minerals, gold, uranium, and agricultural trade. Bypassing the SWIFT system and international banking regulations, diplomatic cables indicate that Burkina Faso and North Korea have previously had informal discussions on barter-based exchanges of technology and weaponry. Stated differently, both nations are constructing a new pipeline that bypasses the World Bank, Washington, and Brussels. Additionally, this is in line with North Korea's changing foreign policy approach, which analysts now refer to as its Southern Opening Doctrine. To put it briefly, Pyongyang is aware that attempting to undermine Western relationships in Asia would not succeed. However, Africa Africa is a prime location for creating a new global footprint, since it is where the colonial system is currently disintegrating. Burkina Faso is just the beginning. Think about this. North Korea discreetly restored diplomatic ties with the Central African Republic and Guinea-Bissau in 2023. Mali and Niger have been commended by their official media for refusing to allow outside intervention. Additionally, its UN ambassadors have been engaging with non-aligned African blocs to present frameworks for mutual defense cooperation and low-cost security systems. Therefore, the arrival of 700 troops in Ouagadougou was not coincidental. It was a component of a broader multi-phase strategy to help the regimes that will not bow down and integrate North Korea into Africa's future. In exchange, Pyongyang is harvesting credibility, which it values even more than raw goods. The idea that Pyongyang is isolated from the rest of the world is undermined each time an African government salutes a North Korean soldier. This is soft power through hard boots. Each time foreign generals express gratitude to North Korean trainers, it sends a message to other non-aligned countries that you don't need the West to succeed or survive. Untouchable space, however, may be North Korea's greatest advantage. Since severing its links with France and ECOWAS, Burkina Faso has become a sort of free zone where Pyongyang may maintain military forces without being monitored by outside parties, American drones, or Western sanctions enforcement. Burkina Faso provides shadows, locations where training can take place, information can be exchanged, and tactics can change without Washington's eyes on them, in a world where American satellites keep an eye on every inch of the DPRK. Traore receives survival, which is as valuable in exchange. He has an additional line of defense now. There is now more than just a young Burkina Faso captain to contend with if someone wishes to remove him. They are up against an alliance that doesn't hesitate, doesn't say sorry, and doesn't require a UN resolution to act. Thus, it is true that North Korea dispatched its commandos to a continent where it has had little influence for many years. It wasn't a leap of faith, though. It was a calculated move into the one area where the struggle for dominance is only getting started and where world power is no longer fixed. However, North Korean boots were sent to Burkina Faso for purposes other than patrolling palace walls and guarding doorways. It was to aid in the reconstruction of something far more profound: a national defense system designed to withstand treachery, subversion, and infiltration. The existence of North Korean commandos is not an endgame, which many people still fail to understand. It's the beginning. A leader like Traore, who has opponents both inside and beyond his own country, cannot be secured by a foreign alliance alone. Power is not the same as protection, and merely surviving is meaningless if you aren't also changing the systems that once exposed you. That's precisely what's taking place in Burkina Faso right now. Unlike anything the nation has ever seen, the advent of North Korean forces has led to a comprehensive military and intelligence recalibration. Traore is doing more than only fixing flaws in the system. The blueprint is being redesigned by him. He is aware of the previous mistakes: divided loyalties, foreign dependent lines of command, a dispersed army, and intelligence units that released more information than they were able to identify. A new organization that is based on strategic autonomy, internal loyalty, and unwavering resistance is beginning to take shape. Silently, the change started. Key employees in delicate positions were first rotated out. Others were reassigned, while others retired. These dismissals were not made public. They involved the surgical elimination of weak points, which were frequently identified by counterintelligence diagnostics and loyalty tests aided by North Korea. The objective: make sure that no one close to the presidency is covertly supporting foreign agendas. The Presidential Guard was then retrained in close protection, emergency state lockdown procedures, encrypted field communication, and how to spot dissidents in secret. This training is very different from traditional military exercises. It is based on the leadership protection units of North Korea, which function under strict discipline, layers of secrecy, and ideological absorption. The internal intelligence structure of Burkina Faso was then reorganized. Burkina Faso's intelligence has historically been viewed as an extension of foreign embassies. Prior to reaching national leadership, reports were edited, filtered, or disseminated by outside parties. And that's over under Traore. In order to protect the state from internal coups and sabotage, a whole new domestic surveillance and alarm system is currently being put into place. Speaking anonymously, a top official gave a direct account of the change. We now observe for ourselves, when formerly we were educated to observe for others. The new philosophy places a strong focus on monitoring local infiltration, confirming profound allegiance, and thwarting subversive plans before they start. Agents are taught to think like analysts and saboteurs rather than merely soldiers, and they learn how to neutralize a threat before it even fires a shot. The capital is not the only area that has undergone transformation. Parallel security chains, which provide direct lines between the president and field commanders and circumvent bureaucracies that were previously used by foreign actors to delay, perplex, or influence military responses, are being established in strategic provincial areas, particularly those that are susceptible to insurgent activity or paramilitary influence. The North Korean defense model, where formal routes exist but true power is anchored in personal loyalty networks and unwavering internal cohesion, served as the blueprint for this dual system, which is overt and highly confidential. Instead of copying Kim Jong-un, Traore is embracing what works, incorporating it with the Pan-African resistance culture, and implementing it skillfully in a state that previously depended on foreign security doctrines. This defensive innovation, which was the result of years of treachery, is not tyranny. There have been fewer reports of military infiltration attempts. Before they could take action, some insider threats were eliminated. The morale of the armed forces, which was previously unstable due to competing allegiances, is now settling around a distinct command structure that reports to Burkina Faso rather than Paris or Brussels. Additionally, this doctrine is subtly growing. Since Mali and Niger have comparable internal vulnerabilities, joint meetings have been organized within the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, to discuss these restructuring strategies. Instead of copying North Korea, the goal is to take its lessons about state security and self-reliance and apply them to the Sahelian environment. The ultimate objective is to become more like what Africa was never permitted to be, not more like Pyongyang, secure, sovereign, and impervious to manipulation. Traore is aware that the dangers still exist. He is aware that sabotage does not necessarily involve a pistol, and that coups do not require uniforms. He is now developing a system that anticipates and eliminates threats rather than merely reacting to them. And that makes all the difference. A new power alliance that has the potential to shift the global balance is emerging as a result of North Korea and Russia actively defending African leadership. Something more significant than domestic change is taking place when a state withstands many murder attempts, foils coup attempts, drives out Western soldiers, and reconstructs its intelligence infrastructure with the assistance of sanctioned countries. Burkina Faso has moved beyond self-defense. The old order is already being shaken by the shockwaves of a global power realignment that is taking place there. More than securing a single leader has been accomplished by the extensive reorganization of Traore's military and security apparatus, which was aided by North Korea and shielded by Russian special operations. It has opened the door to a new model of foreign alliance building in Africa, one that is independent of the West, one that rejects the outdated systems of dependency, and one that provides other African countries wary of being lectured, pillaged, and left defenseless with a workable alternative. The geopolitical repercussions start here. A new axis is emerging as a result of North Korea and Russia actively supporting a government in the Sahel with special troops, encrypted technology, and military doctrine rather than diplomacy. It's not symbolic either. It is expanding, strategic, and essentially a danger to the Western post-colonial framework that has dominated Africa for many years. This axis was not formed for ideological reasons. It has to do with replacement and resistance. Burkina Faso and other countries are no longer merely fending off Western meddling. Alternatives are taking the place of Western infrastructure in areas such as trade, military command, diplomatic procedure, and intelligence. Mutual gain, not moral superiority, is the foundation of this axis. Russia benefits from gold-backed trade partnerships, diplomatic allegiance, and strategic access. North Korea receives international recognition, field testing, and a welcoming environment to increase its sway in the global south. And nations like Burkina Faso receive the one thing the West has never really provided for them: unconditional, unrestricted support. This change is not limited to Burkina Faso. Members of the AES alliance, Mali and Niger, are already following similar strategies. Cyber monitoring methods based on North Korean models are being combined with joint security programs with Russian soldiers in Mali. Bypassing Western banking institutions completely, the government of Niger has created avenues to investigate barter-based transactions in rare minerals and military equipment. These actions are coordinated rather than merely reactive. AES is no longer a defensive bloc. Countries all over the continent are keeping a close eye on it, since it serves as the basis for a new geopolitical order. Even nations with unstable transitions, like Guinea, Chad, and Sudan, are starting to pose new queries. What if ECOWAS is not necessary? What if the ILF is not necessary? What if we all defend ourselves? Fearing irrelevance more than coups, the West is starting to panic. Because the entire business model of Western foreign policy in Africa would fall apart if the Burkina Faso model of establishing internal security with the assistance of Eastern allies, rather than Western clients, were to become widely adopted. No more conditional aid, no more proxy control, and no more regime change diplomacy masquerading as democratic support. Instead, a new political identity based on independence, security, and collective defiance is bringing a continent that has long been split by European boundaries back together. But Africa isn't the only topic. As nations like Iran, Venezuela, and even some regions of Southeast Asia see what's happening and see opportunities, this new axis is subtly connecting to larger movements in Asia and Latin America. There are possibilities for a world free from European alliances, Washington's approval, and institutions that favor a select few at the expense of the majority. Burkina Faso, with the backing of Russia and North Korea, is rewriting the rules of power on the continent, proving that African nations no longer need Western approval to thrive. Survival, strength, and sovereignty are now being defined on Africa's own terms. For the first time, the West isn't being asked to mediate, assist, or lead. It's being left behind. That's why the arrival of 700 North Korean commandos matters. Not because of their weapons or uniforms, but because of what they represent: the collapse of Western dominance in African security and the rise of a new geopolitical era. This is no longer an experiment, it's the blueprint. Burkina Faso is no longer a case study, it's the model. So the real question is how the West react. Will it retaliate out of fear and desperation, or will it accept a world where Africa no longer asks, but commands? The game has changed. What happens next? Tell us what you think in the comments section below. We explore the rich history, culture, and the ongoing struggle for sovereignty in Africa. Join us in this important conversation by subscribing to our channel. By subscribing, you're not just staying informed, you're becoming part of a movement dedicated to reclaiming Africa's rightful place on the global stage. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Let's work together to spread knowledge and inspire change. Thanks for watching.